It's November 11th, 1918. The guns of World War I finally fall silent. The world cheers, soldiers throw their helmets into the air, and newspapers scream, "Peace at last." But behind the celebration, something dark is being written. Not in the trenches, but inside a golden palace in France. A document that promised peace, but guaranteed another war, the Treaty of Versailles. Most people think World War II began in 1939, but what if I told you it actually started right here, in 1919, inside a room filled with arrogance, revenge, and greed? Because what those leaders signed wasn't a treaty, it was a ticking bomb. Germany was crushed under impossible debt. Borders were redrawn with zero logic. Millions of people woke up one morning and realized their homeland now belonged to someone else. The so-called peace deal was built on humiliation, and humiliation is the most expensive fuel in history. It always explodes. While Europe celebrated, America looked the other way. Politicians called it justice, but bankers called it opportunity. And somewhere in the chaos, a failed artist from Austria started taking notes. In this video, you're about to see how one document destroyed an economy, radicalized a generation, and gave birth to dictators.
The time for change is now. We stand at a crossroads of history.
How politicians who wanted peace ended up writing the script for the deadliest war in human history. By the end, you'll realize World War II wasn't a coincidence. It was a business deal gone wrong. A revenge story written in marble halls, and the perfect lesson in how peace, when built on punishment, never lasts. Welcome to the aftermath of World War I, how Versailles planted the seeds of war. They said the war was over, but the silence was fake. November 11th, 1918, the day the world had been waiting for finally arrives. At exactly 11 a.m., the guns that had roared for 4 long years suddenly go silent. Across the muddy trenches of Europe, soldiers stand still, almost confused. Some stare at the sky. Some grip their rifles, unsure whether to let go. For years, the sound of explosions was their reality. Now, there is only silence, a silence so heavy that it feels louder than the war itself. In the cities, church bells begin to ring. People run out of their homes, waving flags, hugging strangers, crying, laughing. The war that took millions of lives has finally ended. Or at least, that's what everyone thinks. Victory parades begin. Politicians give speeches about peace. Newspapers shout headlines like, "The war to end all wars is over." The world celebrates. But beneath this joy, hidden in the shadows of broken buildings and broken hearts, something else is quietly growing: anger, humiliation, and unfinished business. The First World War has left a scar deeper than anyone can imagine. More than 16 million people are dead. Entire towns are wiped off the map. Economies are crushed. Families are torn apart. The war has ended, but its consequences are just beginning to unfold. People are exhausted. Soldiers return home carrying not just their weapons, but invisible scars, nightmares, trauma, and questions no one can answer. Was it worth it? What did we really win? Leaders across Europe gather with a single promise: this must never happen again. They talk about peace, justice, and a new world order. But these are just words spoken in polished rooms, far away from the real suffering. Real peace isn't built with signatures and speeches. Real peace is built on trust and fairness. And in 1918, Europe has neither. Germany, once a proud empire, stands at the center of this storm. Its armies are defeated. Its people are starving. Its economy is falling apart. But perhaps the worst wound is not physical, it's psychological. Germans are told that they have lost. They are blamed for everything. Their leaders surrender. Their soldiers march back home not as heroes, but as defeated men. Trains full of soldiers arrive in Berlin. Instead of cheers, there is confusion. The people never saw the enemy army invade their capital. So how did they lose? Whispers begin to spread in the streets. We were betrayed, stabbed in the back, On those cold Berlin nights, the mood is tense. Shops are empty. Food is scarce. Families huddle together, listening to the faint sound of church bells echoing through the city. The war has ended, but life is not better. Inflation begins to rise. Jobs disappear. A country that once saw itself as strong and united now feels weak, humiliated, and broken. And humiliation, when left to rot, slowly turns into rage. Meanwhile, across Europe, soldiers return to their villages only to find that their homes are gone, their families displaced, their futures uncertain. Millions of young men, barely in their 20s, have witnessed horrors beyond imagination. The trenches were not just battlefields. They were nightmares carved into the earth, rotting bodies, constant fear, poison gas, endless mud. Many of them come back alive, but a part of them never leaves those trenches. And these men now walk among civilians who can never fully understand what they've been through. Politicians in grand halls prepare to sign peace agreements, but they fail to notice the storm brewing outside their windows. On paper, the war is finished. In reality, the tension is only shifting shape. Old rivalries are not resolved. They are buried. Empires have fallen. New borders are drawn. And old wounds are covered with fragile bandages. And fragile bandages don't last long. The silence that follows the war is deceptive. It looks peaceful on the surface. Celebrations, speeches, treaties. But beneath it, nations are bleeding from within. Germany's humiliation is deep. France's wounds are raw. Britain's pride is shaken. Eastern Europe is unstable. And America, after playing a major role in the war, slowly begins to pull back, leaving behind a fragile continent to sort itself out. This moment in history is like the calm before a storm. A silence that isn't peaceful. It's dangerous. The world believes it has ended the greatest war humanity has ever seen. But in reality, it has only ended round one. In the shadows of this peace, seeds are being planted. Seeds of hatred, revenge, and ambition. Seeds that will grow slowly over the next 2 decades. No one can see it clearly now, but history will prove it soon. The silence after 1918 is not the sound of peace. It's the sound of a ticking clock. As Europe tries to build peace, one nation is about to walk into a palace, not to celebrate, but to be humiliated in front of the world. Germany's walk of shame begins next. They promised peace, but peace built on dreams can break on the rocks of reality. The war has ended, but the world is standing on shaky ground. Europe is exhausted. Nations are broken. Millions are grieving. But in this moment of pain, leaders from across the world gather to build something new. A peace so strong that war would never return. They come together with promises of never again. Paris, 1919. A city once known for its art, culture, and beauty now becomes the stage for history. The Paris Peace Conference begins. Diplomats, politicians, and statesmen arrive from all over the world. Their mission: rebuild the world after the most devastating war humanity has ever seen. Their words are full of hope. Their speeches speak of justice, cooperation, and a peaceful future. But outside the palace walls, reality waits like a storm on the horizon. Inside the grand halls of Paris, the atmosphere is electric. Delegates shake hands, smile for photographs, and give inspiring speeches. The world's attention is fixed on this city. Newspapers call it the Conference of Hope. People believe that this is the moment humanity will learn from its mistakes. The idea is simple: punish the guilty, help the weak, and design a new global order that will prevent another war. But the problem is, everyone's version of peace is different. France wants revenge. The French have suffered deeply during the war. Their cities destroyed, their land invaded, their people killed. They want Germany to pay, not just financially, but emotionally. They want Germany to feel the same pain they felt. Britain, on the other hand, has mixed feelings. They've won the war, but at a heavy cost. Their economy is strained, their soldiers are tired, and their empire is stretched thin. Britain wants to maintain its power and balance, not destroy Europe completely. The United States, led by President Woodrow Wilson, brings a different vision. Wilson arrives in Paris like a hero, with his famous 14 points, a plan to build a fair and lasting peace. He dreams of creating the League of Nations, a global organization that would resolve conflicts peacefully and prevent future wars. To many, Wilson seems like the voice of idealism in a world filled with pain. The conference begins with hope, but quickly turns into a battlefield of ideas. Behind closed doors, leaders argue, bargain, and clash. France pushes for harsh punishment on Germany, crippling reparations, military restrictions, and territorial losses. Britain plays a more cautious game, trying to balance punishment with stability. And Wilson tries to push his idealistic vision, but soon realizes that European politics is far more complicated than his speeches. Days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months. The conference drags on. Delegates argue over borders, colonies, debts, and power. Small nations come hoping for justice, but their voices are often ignored. Bigger powers make the real decisions. And in these rooms, history takes shape, not through fairness, but through power. Wilson's vision slowly begins to fade. At first, people cheer his ideas, but as negotiations continue, his 14 points are cut, reshaped, or simply dismissed. European leaders are not interested in idealism. They want results that benefit their nations. The League of Nations is accepted in words, but its foundation is weak. America itself will later refuse to join it, weakening its power before it even begins. Meanwhile, outside the conference halls, ordinary people wait. Soldiers return to broken homes. Farmers struggle to grow food in ruined fields. Families bury their dead and try to rebuild their lives. For them, these grand speeches in Paris feel distant, almost unreal. They want food, jobs, and safety. Not just promises written on paper. The contrast between inside and outside grows sharper every day. Inside, chandeliers, fine suits, polished speeches. Outside, hunger, unemployment, and despair. Leaders talk about peace as if it's a beautiful painting, but the canvas they are working on is torn, dirty, and unstable. France demands security. Britain demands balance. America demands ideals, but no one truly demands understanding. And when peace is built without understanding, it becomes fragile. By the spring of 1919, the Paris Peace Conference has shaped the post-war world, but not in the way people dreamed. Instead of unity, there are cracks. Instead of healing, there are divisions. And in those cracks, dangerous seeds are being planted. They searched for peace. But what they built was something far more complicated. A peace full of promises, power struggles, and hidden tensions. Next, one nation will step into the palace, not as a guest, but as a criminal. Germany's walk of shame is about to begin. They didn't walk into Versailles as equals. They were dragged in, like criminals on trial. June 28, 1919, a bright summer day in France. The Palace of Versailles stands tall and majestic, with its golden ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and long, echoing halls. But today, this palace isn't hosting a royal celebration. It's the stage for Germany's humiliation. The Great War is over, but now comes the punishment. Germany, once a powerful empire, is broken. Its army defeated, its economy collapsing, its people starving. For months, the victors, Britain, France, and the United States, have been negotiating the terms of peace. Now it's Germany's turn to face the music. German delegates arrive in Versailles quietly, almost nervously. They are not allowed to join the discussions. They are not treated as partners. They are simply handed a document, the Treaty of Versailles, and told to sign. No negotiations, no real choices, just a list of punishments. The Germans walk through the palace like strangers in a courtroom. Around them, victorious leaders and journalists watch their every move. The atmosphere is heavy. It's not just a treaty. It's a message to the world. Germany has lost, and it will pay the price. The German delegation is led by Hermann Müller and Johannes Bell. They are politicians, not soldiers, but they carry the weight of a nation on their shoulders. As they enter the Hall of Mirrors, the same hall where the German Empire was declared in 1871 after France's defeat, history flips. The conquerors of yesterday have become the defeated of today. When the Germans are presented with the treaty terms, their reaction is one of shock and outrage. The treaty demands that Germany accept full responsibility for the war, a clause known as Article 231, or the War Guilt Clause. This clause blames Germany entirely for the destruction caused during the war. Along with this comes massive reparations, territorial losses, and military restrictions. The German Empire is forced to give up large parts of its land, including Alsace-Lorraine to France and territories to Poland. Its colonies are taken away and divided among the victors. Its army is reduced to only 100,000 soldiers. No tanks, no air force, no submarines. Its navy is handed over. Its economy is tied to paying billions in reparations for decades to come. For many Germans, this isn't a peace treaty. It's a death sentence. Back home, the German population is already struggling. Food is scarce, inflation is rising. People are angry and humiliated. And now, this treaty adds salt to their wounds. German newspapers call it a diktat, a dictated peace, forced upon them with no say. The sense of betrayal runs deep. Inside the German government, there is chaos. Some leaders argue they should reject the treaty completely, even if it means going back to war. Others know that Germany is too weak to fight again. After days of debate, the painful decision is made. They will sign, not because they agree, but because they have no choice. June 28, 1919. The Hall of Mirrors fills with diplomats, military officers, and journalists. The victorious powers sit proudly, their pens ready. The German delegates stand apart, silent and pale. Cameras click. All eyes are on them. Hermann Müller and Johannes Bell slowly walk forward. In that moment, the entire nation's humiliation is concentrated in their trembling hands. They sign. The ink dries, but the wounds it opens will bleed for decades. With their signatures, Germany accepts full blame for the war, agrees to crippling reparations, and submits to strict military limits. The crowd of victors applauds. Outside, cannons fire in celebration. But inside German hearts, there is only bitterness. This moment is burned into German memory. It's not just the loss of land or money. It's the loss of dignity. A proud nation is made to bow, not just politically, but symbolically. The treaty doesn't heal Europe. It creates new scars. Many German citizens see the Weimar government, the new democratic government formed after the Kaiser's abdication, as traitors for signing the treaty. November criminals, they call them. National pride is shattered, and political anger begins to boil. Extremist groups start gaining support by promising revenge, strength, and a return to glory. Among the many angry voices rising in the streets, one day, a man named Adolf Hitler will turn that humiliation into a dangerous movement. The world watches Germany's humiliation with mixed feelings. The French feel justice has been served. Britain worries that the punishment might be too harsh. The Americans are uneasy. President Wilson himself has doubts about the treaty's fairness. But by then, it's too late. The treaty is signed. The future is set in motion. The Hall of Mirrors goes quiet once the ceremony ends. But what happened inside those walls will echo for years. Versailles was meant to secure peace. Instead, it planted seeds of anger, resentment, and nationalism that would grow into something far darker. Germany didn't walk into Versailles as a guest. It was marched in like a prisoner. And prisoners don't forget. Next, we'll see how this treaty doesn't just affect Germany. It shakes the entire world economy and sets the stage for global chaos. It looked like a palace, but to Germany, it felt like a courtroom. The Palace of Versailles, a masterpiece of French power and pride. Golden ceilings, long mirrors, grand paintings, and wide gardens that stretch to the horizon. For centuries, kings and queens walked these halls in glory. But on June 28, 1919, Versailles becomes something else entirely. Not a palace of celebration, but a courtroom of punishment, and Germany is the accused. From the moment the German delegation arrives, the atmosphere is icy. They travel in secret to avoid public humiliation on the way. Their train has blacked-out windows, as if they are criminals being transported to trial. No cheering crowds await them, no red carpets, just silence, tension, and the weight of defeat. Inside Versailles, representatives from the victorious Allied powers fill the rooms. Diplomats, generals, journalists, and guards. There's a sense of victory in the air, but also arrogance. This is not a negotiation. This is a ceremony where the winners decide and the losers obey. The German delegates are escorted through the palace's corridors. Every step they take echoes loudly, as if the building itself is reminding them where they are. In the same Hall of Mirrors, where, almost 50 years earlier, Germany declared its empire after defeating France in the Franco-Prussian War of 1871. Back then, German soldiers celebrated their triumph in this very room. Now, the tables have turned completely. The Allies have deliberately chosen this location to make a point. For France, it's poetic justice. For Germany, it's humiliation on a global stage. When the Germans enter the main chamber, they see the treaty laid out on an enormous table. The thick document is filled with articles, clauses, and signatures from the victors. The German seats are placed at the far end of the room, almost like defendants in a trial. Above them, giant mirrors reflect the scene. A defeated nation facing its punishment, surrounded by victors watching closely. As the German representatives take their seats, they quickly realize the cruel reality. They are not here to discuss. They are here to listen. There's no back and forth, no negotiations. Weeks of secret meetings between Britain, France, Italy, and the US have already finalized every detail. Germany has no voice. They are handed the treaty and told to respond within a few weeks. When they read the terms, their faces tighten. The conditions are worse than they imagined. Territorial losses, military restrictions, enormous reparations, and most painfully, the War Guilt Clause, Article 231, which forces Germany to accept full responsibility for the war and its damage. One German delegate whispers, "This is not peace. This is slavery." Another says, "If we sign this, Germany will be strangled." The delegation tries to send back objections, long notes arguing that the treaty is unfair and too harsh. But the Allied leaders hardly listen. France, led by Georges Clemenceau, wants to keep Germany weak forever. Britain wants compensation. America wants its idealism reflected, but President Wilson is outnumbered. Their response to German protests is cold and firm. Sign or face invasion. The German representatives feel trapped. Rejecting the treaty would mean a return to war, something Germany cannot survive. Accepting it would mean swallowing national pride and anger. There's no middle path. As the deadline approaches, the palace feels less like a diplomatic venue and more like a trial reaching its final verdict. The victors are the judges, the treaty is the sentence, and Germany is standing in the dock with its hands tied. On the day of the signing, the Hall of Mirrors fills with tension. Journalists crowd the corners, diplomats fill the chairs, and soldiers guard the doors. Sunlight streams through the massive windows, bouncing off the mirrors and illuminating the grand space. But for Germany, the light doesn't bring hope. It exposes their helplessness. Two German delegates, Hermann Müller and Johannes Bell, step forward. The crowd goes silent. In that moment, their every movement is being recorded, photographed, and witnessed by the world. It's not just about signing a document, it's about public humiliation. The Allied leaders sit proudly as if delivering judgment. The Germans walk slowly to the table. No speeches, no negotiations, just trembling hands signing away land, money, pride, and power. The sound of the pen scratching the paper echoes louder than the applause that follows. It's the sound of a nation being forced to kneel. The Germans leave the palace in silence. No one speaks to them. No one comforts them. They are escorted out like prisoners after sentencing. The crowd outside celebrates, but inside the German hearts, a wound has been carved. Deep, painful, unforgettable. Versailles was meant to bring peace, but its grand halls have turned into something else. The palace didn't feel like a place of diplomacy. It felt like a courtroom, where Germany stood accused, judged, and punished without a chance to defend itself. This moment doesn't just affect the German politicians in that room. It travels back to every German home, every newspaper, every soldier still recovering from the war. It fuels a powerful emotion: humiliation. And humiliation is dangerous when it spreads across an entire nation. The treaty is signed, but outside Versailles, the world's economy is already starting to shake. The cost of war and punishment will soon create a global earthquake, one that no one is ready for. They didn't just sign a treaty, they signed away their pride, their power, and their future. When the German delegates put their signatures on the Treaty of Versailles, they weren't just agreeing to peace. They were agreeing to a long list of punishments that would shape their country's destiny for decades. The treaty didn't just end a war, it cut deep into the heart of Germany. The Allied powers, mainly France, Britain, and the United States, had different goals when crafting the treaty. France wanted revenge. Britain wanted compensation. The United States, under President Wilson, wanted to build a lasting peace based on his 14 points. But when it came to Germany, most of the victorious nations agreed on one thing: Germany should pay. The treaty's punishments came in three brutal forms: reparations, military limits, and territorial losses. Each one hit Germany like a hammer, one after another. 1. Reparations. Paying for a war. They could barely survive. The first blow was financial. Germany was forced to accept full responsibility for the war through the War Guilt Clause, Article 231. This clause became the legal foundation for demanding massive reparations. Germany had to pay for the damage caused to civilian populations and infrastructure across Europe. The amount? 132 billion gold marks, an astronomical figure at the time. To give perspective, that's equivalent to hundreds of billions of dollars today. Germany's already broken economy was now expected to carry a burden heavier than it could possibly bear. Factories had been destroyed during the war. Farmland was ruined. Millions of workers were dead or injured. And now, the government had to raise money it simply didn't have. The only way to do this was by printing more currency, a decision that would later trigger hyperinflation, where money lost its value so fast that people used banknotes as wallpaper or burned them for heat. For ordinary Germans, These reparations felt like a punishment for something they didn't do. Many families had already lost their sons and brothers in the trenches. Now they were being told to pay for a war they believed was not entirely their fault. Resentment grew quickly. It wasn't just economic pressure. It was emotional humiliation. 2. Military limits. A nation disarmed. The second blow came to Germany's pride, its military. Before the war, Germany had one of the most powerful armies in the world. Its soldiers were disciplined, its navy was strong, and its people were proud of their military tradition. But the treaty crushed this completely. Under the new terms, the German army was limited to 100,000 men. There would be no tanks, no air force, and no submarines. The navy was reduced to just a few small ships. Conscription was banned, meaning no compulsory military service. All weapons, equipment, and factories for making arms were strictly controlled by the Allied powers. For a country that saw its army as a symbol of national strength, this was more than a rule. It was an insult. Soldiers returned home to find their uniforms useless. Military leaders who once commanded massive forces were left powerless. The new Weimar government, already seen as weak, was blamed for accepting these humiliating terms. Across Germany, a dangerous idea began to grow: that their country hadn't been defeated on the battlefield, but stabbed in the back by politicians. This myth would later become a powerful weapon for extremists. 3. Territorial losses. A nation carved apart. The third blow was territorial. Germany lost 13% of its land, 10% of its population, and all of its overseas colonies. These weren't just random regions. They included economically valuable areas like Alsace-Lorraine, which was returned to France, and the Saar Basin, rich in coal, which was placed under League of Nations control. The treaty also created the Polish Corridor, giving Poland access to the sea, but cutting East Prussia off from the rest of Germany. German-speaking populations suddenly found themselves living under foreign governments. For many Germans, this felt like their homeland was being carved up like a pie, with no say. Beyond Europe, Germany's colonies in Africa and the Pacific were seized and divided among the victors. The message was clear: Germany wasn't just defeated, it was being dismantled. The emotional impact. Humiliation turns into anger. For the average German citizen, the treaty was not a document of peace. It was a symbol of humiliation. Newspapers called it a diktat, a dictated peace forced upon them without negotiation. Public outrage spread like wildfire. People gathered in cafes, schools, and markets, discussing how unfair and cruel the treaty was. The new democratic government in Germany, the Weimar Republic, became the target of this anger. Many Germans saw them not as saviors, but as traitors. The phrase "November criminals" became popular, referring to those who signed the armistice and accepted the treaty. Politically, the country was boiling. Extreme parties, both left and right, started using the treaty as fuel. On the right, nationalists and former soldiers argued that Germany needed to rise again, to take back its pride. On the left, revolutionary groups pointed to the economic suffering as proof that the old systems had failed. This mix of humiliation, anger, and instability created a dangerous storm. A treaty that was meant to end war, but planted new seeds. The Treaty of Versailles was supposed to secure lasting peace, but its harsh terms did the opposite. By stripping Germany of its power, dignity, and hope, it created a deep wound in the national psyche. The reparations crushed the economy. The military limits wounded national pride. The territorial losses shattered the country's identity. And deep inside German society, resentment began to grow. Quietly at first, then louder with every passing year. People felt betrayed, cornered, and humiliated. These emotions would not disappear. They would wait, simmer, and eventually explode. The treaty cut deep, but soon the world would feel its shockwaves. as the German economy collapses and desperation turns into chaos. The war had ended, but for ordinary Germans, the real battle was just beginning, the battle to survive. The guns went silent in 1918, but inside Germany, another kind of war was unfolding. Not fought with weapons, but with hunger, money, and fear. The Treaty of Versailles had placed a crushing weight on the nation, and now that weight began to squeeze every corner of German life. Germany emerged from World War I broken. More than 2 million soldiers were dead, and millions more returned home, wounded, mentally scarred, and jobless. Cities lay in ruins, farmlands were damaged, factories were idle. The economy was not just weak, it was shattered. The government was now expected to rebuild the nation, feed its people, create jobs, and pay massive reparations to the Allied powers, all at the same time. It was an impossible task. Ordinary German families felt the pressure almost immediately. Food was scarce. Prices began to rise. Jobs disappeared. Savings vanished overnight. What was once normal life became a daily struggle to survive. One of the biggest reasons for Germany's collapse was the Reparations Bill. The Allied powers demanded 132 billion gold marks in payments. The government had two options: raise taxes or print money. Raising taxes on a starving, angry population was political suicide. So they chose the second option: printing more money. At first, it seemed like a simple fix, but soon it would spiral out of control. By 1921 to 1923, Germany faced one of the worst hyperinflation crises in modern history. The value of the German mark collapsed. What cost 1 mark yesterday might cost 10 today, 100 tomorrow, and 1,000 the day after. Money became almost meaningless. Workers received their wages twice a day, once in the morning and once at noon, so they could rush out and spend it before prices rose again. People carried wages home in wheelbarrows. Children made toys out of stacks of worthless banknotes. Shops stopped putting price tags on goods because prices changed every hour. For families, it was heartbreaking. Life savings that had taken decades to build disappeared in days. A pensioner who had saved for retirement suddenly couldn't buy a loaf of bread. As money lost value, factories began shutting down. Businesses couldn't afford raw materials. Unemployment skyrocketed. By 1923, millions of Germans were jobless. Food shortages grew worse. Bread lines stretched down the streets. Malnutrition, disease, and desperation spread through cities and villages alike. The German middle class, the backbone of society, was hit the hardest. These were the shopkeepers, teachers, small business owners, clerks. They had worked their whole lives to save and build stable futures. And now, everything they had was gone. In 1923, when Germany failed to keep up with reparations payments, French and Belgian troops occupied the Ruhr, Germany's most important industrial region. The German government responded with passive resistance, encouraging workers to go on strike rather than cooperate with the occupiers. But this made the economic situation even worse. With factories silent and no goods being produced, the government kept printing money to pay the striking workers, fueling hyperinflation further. What began as economic pressure turned into national humiliation. Beyond numbers and banknotes, there was something more dangerous happening: a psychological collapse. For years, Germans had believed they were one of the great powers of the world. But now they stood in bread lines, counting worthless bills, watching foreign soldiers control their industries. Hope began to fade. People stopped trusting the government. Many believed the Weimar Republic had failed them. They began to look for someone, or something, to blame. The stab-in-the-back myth spread like wildfire. It claimed that Germany had not been truly defeated on the battlefield, but betrayed by politicians, Jews, socialists, and so-called November criminals who had signed the armistice. The Treaty of Versailles didn't just weaken Germany militarily, it crushed its economy. Hyperinflation destroyed trust in money. Unemployment killed hope. Reparations drained resources. And foreign occupation humiliated the nation. In this chaos, extremist movements found their chance. Radical parties promised strong leadership, national pride, and solutions to the suffering. People who had lost everything were willing to listen. The war had ended on the battlefield. But in German homes, the suffering had only begun. The treaty's weight didn't just crush the economy, it crushed people's spirits. And in this darkness, dangerous ideas began to take root. The guns were silent, but inside Germany, the real war was political. The First World War had ended, but Germany's struggle was only beginning. The empire had collapsed, the Kaiser had fled, and what remained was a country broken in body and spirit. In the ruins of defeat arose a fragile experiment in democracy, the Weimar Republic. It promised freedom and renewal, yet to millions it soon came to mean weakness, humiliation, and betrayal. In November 1918, as revolution spread through the cities, Kaiser Wilhelm II abdicated and escaped to the Netherlands. Moderate and socialist politicians gathered in Weimar to form a provisional government. They signed the armistice that ended the fighting and later accepted the Treaty of Versailles. For a brief moment, there was hope. Germany would rebuild and embrace a modern, democratic future. But the new leaders faced impossible odds: economic collapse, political extremism, and a nation that no longer trusted authority. Out of this resentment grew a poisonous legend, the stab-in-the-back myth, Dolchstoßlegende. It claimed that Germany had not been defeated in the field, but betrayed at home by politicians, socialists, and Jews. The story was false, yet in a wounded nation it felt true. Soldiers had returned from the front confused. They had seen no enemy on German soil, yet their leaders had surrendered. Nationalists seized on that confusion, branding Weimar politicians the November criminals. The myth gave people someone to blame and turned humiliation into hatred, a weapon that extremists would soon use to devastating effect. The Weimar Republic stood between two fires. On the left, communists inspired by the Russian Revolution demanded a workers' state. On the right, monarchists and nationalists plotted to restore military rule. In 1919, the communist Spartacist uprising erupted in Berlin. The government survived only with help from paramilitary Freikorps units. In 1920, right-wing officers launched the Kapp Putsch, another failed coup. Each crisis left the republic weaker and its people more doubtful that democracy could keep order. Violence soon became part of everyday life. Former soldiers, unable to adjust to peace, joined militias that fought pitched battles with communist groups in the streets. Between 1919 and 1923, more than 350 political assassinations occurred. Courts punished left-wing offenders harshly, but showed leniency to right-wing killers, deepening the sense that justice itself was broken. Ordinary citizens began to equate democracy with chaos. Economic hardship made everything worse. Reparations payments drained the treasury, unemployment soared, and in 1923, hyperinflation wiped out savings overnight. Money lost value by the hour. Workers carried wages home in baskets. Middle-class families, once the backbone of German society, watched their security vanish. To many, Weimar seemed powerless, its politicians endlessly arguing while the nation starved. People began longing for strong leadership, someone who could restore stability and pride. The government tried to steady the country. It wrote a progressive constitution, expanded civil rights, and sought compromise with the Allies. But every decision carried a cost. Tax increases angered the public. Printing money destroyed faith in the currency, and negotiating with foreign powers looked like surrender. Every step forward appeared to confirm the accusation that democracy meant weakness. Even moderates began to doubt whether the experiment could last. Meanwhile, extremist movements grew bolder. Nationalists and radicals exploited the language of betrayal, turning every failure into proof that the Republic was illegitimate. They didn't need to topple it immediately, only to convince the people that it deserved to die. The Reichstag descended into constant quarrels. Coalitions collapsed as quickly as they formed. For many Germans, Parliament had become a symbol of confusion rather than leadership. The Weimar Republic was born in hope, but raised in distrust. It faced enemies on all sides, crippled by economic disaster and scarred by war. By the mid-1920s, faith in democracy had eroded so deeply that millions no longer looked to politicians for answers. They looked instead for a savior, someone who promised order, unity, and revenge. In the shadows of that political chaos, such a figure was already waiting, watching the turmoil and preparing to claim the anger that Weimar could no longer control. When the world caught a cold in 1929, Germany got pneumonia. The 1920s had given Germany a brief illusion of recovery. After the war and the humiliation of Versailles, life seemed to be improving. With American loans and foreign investment, factories reopened, shops were busy, and cities like Berlin were alive with art, music, and new hope. But this hope was fragile, built on borrowed money, not real strength. Germany's recovery depended on the American economy, and when that economy collapsed, Germany's would collapse with it. In October 1929, the New York Stock Exchange crashed. Within days, banks failed, businesses shut down, and panic spread across the world. For Germany, the blow was immediate and devastating. American loans were withdrawn, new credit stopped, and industries that depended on foreign money went bankrupt. Within months, millions lost their jobs, and the fragile Weimar economy simply fell apart. By 1932, over 6 million Germans were unemployed, nearly one-third of the nation's workforce. Cities were filled with jobless men standing in long bread lines. Families lost their homes. The middle class, already weakened by years of inflation, watched their savings vanish again. Hunger and hopelessness spread like a disease. Germany's brief dream of recovery had turned into a nightmare of despair. The Weimar Republic, already unstable, could not cope. Politicians argued endlessly while the crisis deepened. Coalition governments came and went, each weaker than the last. Chancellor Heinrich Brüning tried to fight the crisis by cutting spending and wages, hoping to stabilize the economy. Instead, his policies made life worse. Poverty grew, anger boiled, and people began to lose faith in democracy itself. As Parliament deadlocked, Brüning ruled through emergency decrees signed by President Hindenburg, a sign that democratic rule was slipping away. In times of desperation, people look for someone to blame and someone to save them. The Great Depression gave Germany both. Extremist movements began to rise, communists on the left promising revolution, and nationalists on the right promising strength and pride. Among them was a small party led by Adolf Hitler, the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the Nazis. Before 1929, they were almost irrelevant. But the Depression changed everything. Hitler offered simple answers to complex problems. He told people that Germany's suffering came from betrayal, from the November criminals who had signed the armistice, from the Treaty of Versailles, from Jews and corrupt politicians. He promised to restore jobs, dignity, and national greatness. His words were lies, but they were comforting lies. And in desperate times, that was enough. His rallies were powerful, emotional, and theatrical. He didn't sound like a politician. He sounded like a savior. In 1928, the Nazis won less than 3% of the vote. By 1930, they were the second largest party in the Reichstag. 2 years later, they were the largest. Economic misery had become political fuel. As democracy crumbled, Hitler's movement grew stronger every month. By the early 1930s, Germany was a nation on the edge. Hunger, unemployment, and humiliation filled daily life. People stopped believing that democracy could protect them. Many began to think that only a strong leader could bring order and pride back to Germany. The Great Depression had done more than destroy the economy. It had destroyed faith in the Republic itself. The crash of 1929 was a global disaster, but in Germany, it was catastrophic. It didn't just ruin businesses or banks, it broke the spirit of a nation. Out of that despair, anger, and chaos, a new power was rising, one that would soon lead Germany and the world into an even greater tragedy. When hope disappears, loud voices take over. Germany in the early 1930s wasn't just struggling, it was falling apart. The Great Depression had destroyed the economy, millions were unemployed, and the Weimar Republic looked helpless. People were hungry, angry, and desperate. And in that desperation, the loudest voices began to rise, voices that spoke not of unity or democracy, but of rage, pride, and revenge. For years, moderate politicians had tried to guide Germany through endless crises: war defeat, reparations, inflation, and now economic collapse. But their constant arguing and weak coalitions had shattered public trust. Ordinary citizens no longer believed the government could protect them. Democracy, once a symbol of hope, now looked like chaos. People stopped listening to the middle and turned toward the extremes, toward anyone who promised clear answers in a world of confusion. Two powerful extremes dominated Germany's politics. On the left, the communists called for revolution and a new workers' state like the Soviet Union. On the right, nationalist movements promised to restore pride, rebuild the army, and destroy the Treaty of Versailles. Both sides hated democracy, and both gained strength fast. Street fights between communist and right-wing militias became common, turning cities into battlegrounds. The Weimar government stood in the middle, weak, divided, and losing control. Among these right-wing groups, one began to rise above the rest: the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazis. A decade earlier, they had been a small, radical movement. Their leader, Adolf Hitler, had even gone to prison after a failed coup in 1923. But Hitler turned his failure into opportunity. During his trial and time in jail, he presented himself as a patriot, not a criminal, and used his book Mein Kampf to spread his ideas. A Germany reborn under one strong leader, free of its enemies. For years, few took him seriously. Then came the Great Depression. As jobs vanished and hunger spread, the Nazi message found millions of desperate ears. The party's propaganda offered simple answers. Germany's suffering was caused by the November criminals, who surrendered in 1918, by the Jews who controlled business and politics, and by communists who wanted to destroy the nation. They promised jobs, unity, and national pride. These lies were dangerous, but they were comforting lies, and many wanted to believe them. Hitler's rallies became massive emotional events, filled with flags, uniforms, music, and fiery speeches. He didn't just speak, he commanded. People who felt forgotten suddenly felt part of something larger. The Nazis mastered propaganda like no one else. Posters, newspapers, radio broadcasts, and films carried their message into every home. Germany was broken, and only the Nazis could fix it. They targeted everyone: workers, farmers, war veterans, anyone who felt abandoned. Their message turned pain into purpose. While winning hearts, the Nazis built muscle through their paramilitary wing, the SA, the Brown Shirts. They marched through cities, intimidated opponents, and clashed with communists in the streets. To unemployed men, joining the SA meant a uniform, a sense of belonging, and power. Their violent presence made the Nazis look strong and disciplined. Everything the weak Weimar government was not. By 1930, the Nazis had gone from a fringe movement to the second largest party in Germany. The communists also grew, and the political center, the foundation of democracy, collapsed. Every new crisis pushed more people toward extremism. The louder the radicals spoke, the more the people listened. By the early 1930s, Germany was standing on a knife's edge. The radicals weren't just shouting anymore. They were shaping the future. The Republic was dying, and its defenders were too few to stop it. And at the center of this storm stood Adolf Hitler, the man whose voice would soon drown out all others. When hope disappears, reason fades, and the loudest voices become the most dangerous ones. One man looked at Germany's humiliation and saw his greatest opportunity. The Treaty of Versailles was meant to end a war, but for Adolf Hitler, it became something far more powerful, a political weapon. Every clause, every punishment, every humiliation inside that treaty became a tool in his hands, turning national shame into personal ambition. For most Germans, Versailles wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a wound that refused to heal. It blamed Germany entirely for the war, stripped away land and colonies, crushed the army, and demanded impossible reparations. It humiliated a proud nation, treating it not as a defeated power, but as a criminal. Soldiers returned home feeling betrayed, families suffered under economic strain, and children grew up hearing that their country had been wronged. This collective pain became the emotional fuel Hitler needed. When Hitler began his rise, he didn't waste time explaining complex economics or politics. He offered one simple explanation for every problem: the Treaty of Versailles. Factories closing? Versailles. Unemployment? Versailles. National humiliation? Versailles. He gave anger a face and despair a name. His genius wasn't just in politics, it was in storytelling. He turned the nation's pain into a narrative of betrayal and revenge. Opposition to Versailles became the beating heart of Nazi identity. Every poster, every speech, every rally carried the same promise: we will tear this treaty apart and restore Germany's honor. For a population that had lived under humiliation for more than a decade, those words were electrifying. Hitler didn't just criticize the treaty. He made defiance of it a symbol of German pride. People didn't just agree with him, they felt him. In a deeply divided country, Versailles gave Hitler something priceless: unity through hatred. Communists, monarchists, conservatives, they all despised the treaty. Hitler seized that shared resentment and built his movement around it. Even those who didn't trust the Nazis often admitted that Versailles was unfair, and that made Hitler's message easier to believe. He didn't have to invent anger. He only had to focus it. The Nazi propaganda machine amplified this obsession. Posters showed a chained Germany kneeling before the Allies. Films and newspapers portrayed Versailles as a betrayal engineered by weak leaders and foreign powers. In schools, children were taught that the treaty was the root of all suffering. Hitler understood that emotion repeated often enough becomes truth, and by repeating this message again and again, he made it impossible to ignore. While other politicians reluctantly accepted Versailles as a reality, Hitler rejected it completely. He promised not to negotiate or reform it, but to destroy it. His defiance made him look strong in a country tired of weakness. Germans saw in him a man unafraid to confront their greatest humiliation. He became the voice of resistance, the embodiment of pride reborn, and his timing was perfect. The Great Depression had crushed the economy. The Weimar Republic looked helpless. Extremist movements were spreading fast. Amid all this chaos, Hitler pointed to one constant villain: the treaty. His message was simple: they broke us with Versailles. I will break the treaty and make Germany strong again. For millions of frustrated, jobless, humiliated citizens, that was all they needed to hear. As the Nazi Party grew, Versailles remained at the core of its appeal. Every speech, every vote, every banner carried echoes of vengeance and revival. When Germans voted for Hitler, many weren't just supporting a politician. They were voting against Versailles. What the Allies had written to weaken Germany ended up empowering the man who would destroy it. Versailles was meant to end one war, but in Hitler's hands, it became the spark for the next. Every word of humiliation written in 1919 became a flame, burning in the hearts of millions, and Hitler was ready to turn that fire into conquest. Sometimes the most dangerous sound in history is silence. As Adolf Hitler rose inside Germany, the rest of Europe watched carefully. The Treaty of Versailles had been written to secure peace, but now barely a decade later, the man who called it a shameful lie was gaining power. The warning signs were clear, yet Europe chose to wait, hoping peace would somehow hold. That hesitation gave Hitler the one thing he needed most: time. The First World War had left Europe shattered. Millions were dead, cities destroyed, economies drained. Britain and France, though victorious, were exhausted. Their citizens wanted peace, not another generation sent to the trenches. Never again became the promise of the age. Meanwhile, new nations like Poland and Czechoslovakia focused on survival, and the League of Nations, created to prevent future wars, looked strong on paper, but weak in reality. This was the fragile world that greeted Hitler as he began to challenge the order built from the ruins of war. In 1933, Hitler became Chancellor of Germany. Within months, he crushed political opposition, silenced critics, and began quietly rebuilding the military, an act forbidden by Versailles. Secret training programs began. Factories shifted toward weapons production. Paramilitary groups expanded. Each move was cautious, designed to test how far he could go before anyone stopped him. The answer? Very far. Britain and France were not blind. They knew what was happening. But both were haunted by the ghosts of World War I, the trenches, the dead, the trauma. Their people wanted peace at any cost, and politicians listened. Rather than confront Germany, they tried to appease it, believing that if Hitler got part of what he wanted, he might stop there. It was a dangerous gamble, rooted in fear and fatigue. The League of Nations, designed to enforce peace, proved powerless. When Japan invaded Manchuria or Italy attacked Ethiopia, the League protested but did nothing. Hitler took note. If they couldn't stop others, why would they stop him? In 1933, he made his first bold move. Germany withdrew from the League of Nations and the World Disarmament Conference. The world responded with concern, but no action. That silence was his first victory. By 1935, Hitler no longer hid his ambitions. He publicly announced Germany's rearmament and reintroduced conscription, both direct violations of Versailles. Britain and France protested, but again did nothing. In fact, Britain signed a naval agreement allowing Germany to expand its fleet. Many British politicians even believed Versailles had been too harsh and saw Hitler's actions as corrections. Every diplomatic excuse gave him more room to grow. Then, in March 1936, came the Rhineland gamble. Hitler sent troops into the demilitarized zone along France's border, a clear, risky violation of the treaty. His army was weak and unprepared. If France had responded with force, he might have been humiliated or even overthrown. But France did nothing. Its leaders feared another war and doubted Britain's support. Hitler later admitted, "If the French had marched in, we would have had to retreat with our tails between our legs." But they didn't. The gamble worked. Why did Europe stay silent? Because it was still recovering from the Great Depression. Because its politics were divided and unstable. Because many leaders feared communism more than fascism and saw Germany as a potential shield against the Soviet Union. And because they underestimated Hitler, believing him to be just another loud nationalist who could be contained. Each act of silence became a signal. Leaving the League? No action. Rearmament? No action. Rhineland? No action. With every gamble that went unchallenged, Hitler grew stronger and bolder. The policy of appeasement, meant to keep peace, instead gave him time to prepare for war. Europe's leaders watched, hoping the storm might pass. They whispered about peace, while the winds of war gathered over the continent. And when that storm finally broke, it was too late to stop it easily. The silence that had been meant to preserve peace had already opened the door to destruction. They didn't rush into war. They prepared for it. Step by quiet step, Germany's rise after Versailles wasn't a sudden sprint. It was a steady buildup, a machine slowly being wound tight. Each move seemed small enough to ignore, yet each shifted the balance of power. While the world told itself it was business as usual, the Nazi state rebuilt every part of its machinery: economy, army, society, and mind, until the engine began to hum. That hum would soon become thunder. At first, The changes looked harmless. Factories that once made trains began producing tanks. Youth programs taught discipline that was really military training. New laws claimed to protect security, but handed full control to the state. Massive public works, bridges, highways, and factories were praised as economic recovery, yet they also prepared Germany for war. Roads built for workers would soon move troops. In 1936, Hitler launched the four-year plan, an all-out effort to make Germany ready for war. Raw materials were hoarded, factories retooled, and trade deals secured oil, rubber, and iron. The goal was clear: independence from foreign powers and readiness for conflict. It looked like national renewal, but it was rearmament disguised as progress. Hitler's buildup came in stages. At first, the world saw parades, uniforms, and air shows, symbols that could be dismissed as pride. But behind them were secret training sites, hidden arms production, and new divisions forming in silence. By the time Germany openly reintroduced conscription, its army was already too strong to challenge easily. The cautious buildup had worked. Diplomacy played its part. Hitler signed treaties when useful, broke them when it suited him, and used flattery or trade to divide potential enemies. Each calculated move tested how much the world would tolerate. When he re-entered the Rhineland in 1936, a bold violation of Versailles, no one stopped him. France hesitated, Britain stayed quiet, and Hitler learned the most dangerous lesson of all: silence equals permission. Propaganda kept the gears oiled. Newspapers, radio, and film repeated one message: Germany had been humiliated and now deserved to rise again. These ideas made every violation seem like justice, not aggression. The regime's story was simple: we are fixing old wrongs. Many Europeans, still sympathetic to Germany's post-war suffering, accepted that logic. The engine of war kept turning, disguised as national restoration. By the late 1930s, militarization had become a way of life. The SA and Hitler Youth drilled daily. The Air Force trained in secret. The Navy prepared for expansion. Marches and parades filled the streets, each one normalizing militarism and dulling foreign alarm. What once looked threatening began to feel ordinary. Abroad, Europe misread the rhythm. Some leaders believed Hitler only wanted minor border changes. Others thought a strong Germany might keep communism in check. And many simply hoped for peace. That mixture of fear and wishful thinking gave Hitler all the time he needed. Each year of delay made his forces stronger and his enemies weaker. Inside Germany, the constant message of unity and revenge reshaped the people themselves. Years of chaos and hardship made them eager to believe. Jobs returned, pride returned, and the promise of a restored nation made harsh policies easier to accept. Fear of communism and memories of humiliation kept most silent. By 1938, the pieces were in place. Factories producing weapons, propaganda uniting the people, diplomats neutralizing opponents, and soldiers ready for orders. The engine didn't roar. It ticked with precision. Each treaty broken, each march tolerated, brought Europe closer to the edge. As 1939 approached, the quiet preparations turned into open momentum. Borders trembled. Promises of peace rang hollow, and the hum of rearmament grew into a drumbeat. The world had heard the first turns of the machine, but still refused to believe it was heading toward war. Soon, that machine would move from preparation to action. The peace built at Versailles was collapsing under its own weight, and the war it was meant to prevent was about to begin. It was supposed to end all wars. Instead, it lit the fuse for the next one. When the Treaty of Versailles was signed in 1919, the world cheered. Headlines called it the peace of the century. Leaders smiled under the golden ceilings of Versailles, convinced they had secured a safer world. But hidden within the pages of that treaty were not just terms. There were wounds. Wounds that would fester, and 2 decades later, explode into the deadliest war in history. On paper, Versailles looked powerful. It punished Germany harshly, stripping its land, military, and pride. Reparations were crushing, and the blame for the war rested squarely on Germany's shoulders. It was meant to guarantee peace forever, but it didn't heal. It humiliated. And humiliation is a seed that grows in silence. For Germans, Versailles wasn't a treaty. It was a national trauma. Every clause whispered the same message. You lost. You're guilty. You will pay. Pride vanished. The army was dismantled. The economy bled. Even the nation's identity fractured. In schools, children learned of their country's shame. In homes, families spoke of betrayal. In newspapers, the word diktat, forced command, became a symbol of injustice. As the 1920s unfolded, that bitterness deepened. Hyperinflation destroyed savings. Political chaos filled the streets. Bread cost billions of marks. Veterans begged in uniform. Ordinary Germans didn't read the treaty. They felt it in their hunger and despair. The Treaty of Versailles became the villain in every story of suffering. Meanwhile, the victors believed they had secured peace. France trusted the treaty's military limits. Britain saw reparations as justice. The League of Nations promised to uphold order. But the treaty had a fatal flaw. It punished without reconciling. It silenced Germany's voice without solving its pain. It was a lid placed on a boiling pot, while the fire still burned beneath. Then came the Great Depression. The global economy collapsed, and Germany, already broken, was pushed to the edge. Millions lost their jobs. Desperation spread. In this chaos, one man saw opportunity. Adolf Hitler understood what others didn't. Versailles wasn't just Germany's shame. It was Germany's rallying cry. He built his rise on its ruins. His speeches promised revenge. His rallies thundered with the vow to tear the treaty apart. "We didn't lose the war," he said. "We were betrayed." And the crowd roared. Every policy, every slogan, every march revolved around one promise: to undo Versailles. Step by step, he broke its chains, rebuilding the army, rearming the nation, reclaiming territory. And each time, the world looked away. Britain and France, haunted by memories of the trenches, chose silence. Appeasement became their strategy. And to Hitler, every silence was permission. The irony was complete. The treaty that sought to stop German aggression gave birth to the man who would unleash it. Versailles didn't crush Germany. It united it around a shared rage. Hitler turned a peace document into a weapon, transforming national humiliation into national purpose. By 1939, the map drawn at Versailles was coming undone. Borders blurred. Agreements failed. The League of Nations stood powerless. And when German troops finally crossed into Poland, the world realized too late. The next war had been born 20 years earlier, in that glittering hall at Versailles. World War II didn't begin with a gunshot. It began with a signature, one written with hope, but inked in bitterness. The Treaty of Versailles was meant to close a chapter in history. Instead, it wrote the prologue to an even darker one. And when the guns roared again, the world finally understood: a peace built on humiliation is no peace at all. Peace isn't just signed on paper, it's written in hearts. And when hearts remain broken, history doesn't rest, it repeats. The Treaty of Versailles was meant to end a war. Instead, it became the starting line of the next one. Its punishments ran deep, its wounds never healed, and its silence was filled with anger. The world believed it had secured lasting peace, but in truth, it had built a fragile structure on bitter ground. In the years that followed, every clause of that treaty echoed through Germany. In schools, in homes, in speeches, a generation grew up under its weight. And when desperation met ambition, when humiliation met propaganda, the path to the Second World War became inevitable. History teaches us a painful but important lesson. You cannot build peace through humiliation. Real peace demands fairness, understanding, and vision, not just victory. Versailles failed to give that, and the world paid the price with the deadliest war humanity has ever seen. As the guns roared again in 1939, The world finally understood what it had missed in 1919. The signatures that were meant to close a chapter had in fact opened a darker one. This is the story of how a treaty built for peace created war.